every single person here has probably missed out on the best thing that ever could have happened to them in their lives. And the second you accept that truth, that the millions of decisions you've already made in your life have probably kept you away from the best thing that could have ever happened in your life. The love of your life, the idea of your life, the business opportunity, the money, like all of it. Then I think you can start leaning into the human experience. I'm telling you, that's what it is. Like we don't give ourselves enough room, and it goes back to patience. Like, you know, how do you do both? By knowing you have a lot of time to do both. And as far as FOMO, you're never gonna know how it would have been anyway. Plus, the thing I always think about to make myself feel even better about the fact that I've said no to the best things that ever could have happened to me is knowing that it also would have changed the course of my life. So yes, maybe I would have said yes to going out with my friends this night, and I would have saw something and it would have led to the idea of my life. But maybe then while I was executing that idea, something bad could have happened. Maybe that would have brought me to a meeting in LA and I wasn't paying attention and a car hit me and I'd be dead right now. I think people are fascinating in their inability to understand how much of life you don't control, and that like everything is FOMO. You need to flip it. Instead of thinking of it literally, you need to think of it much bigger. Like that's happening every day. Do you understand? Like you're thinking about it as like, should I go do this project? Should I do this? You're looking at the big things. I think it's even if you left your house 5 minutes earlier tomorrow, your life would be different. It's really, really big. You know what I mean? Like I know it may sound silly, but what I think it's done for me and when I see why it works for others, it actually liberates you into not thinking that you have to make these perfect decisions. I don't think I make any good decisions. I'm being serious. Like, I just think I'm making decisions to the best of my ability at that moment, and sometimes it's gonna be very good, and sometimes it's not gonna be, but you're putting too much pressure. Listen to the questions. We're just very good at putting pressure on ourselves to achieve something that's not achievable. For what? Actually, you know what? Based on the questions, and then I'll let you ask your second. I have one very good recommendation. If you can find yourself in the next year or two to have a conversation with somebody extremely elderly that is not a family member of yours, do it. Maybe you can even have like a grandparents exchange program. I really mean this. I think that the thing that I do well is my parents always told me stories as a child that when I was 3 and 4, I'd go outside and I'd hang out with 90-year-old people and like genuinely like hang out with them. And I always thought it was a funny story. And then as I've gotten older, I'm like, oh, okay. Like I think I do believe in this old soul stuff, like you're attracted to certain energies. I think all I'm doing now is telling you the things that 90-year-olds know. I think you need more of that in your life. Like, you know, I think the way to attack truly having FOMO is flipping it and understanding everything is FOMO, everything's in play. You're missing out on everything all the time, which then will make you comfortable with it. You know, I've always felt that the thing that helps me with that the most is having the capacity to step away. And step away is not as literal as, you know, moving out of a house or stepping away. It doesn't mean you have to step away and go for 6 months to the mountains and come back. It means stepping away in actually creating more time for yourself to think and be around the elements that were who you were. I'll give you an example with me. When I feel like I'm like a little bit more detached from the center, I tend to go back to spending more times with my friends from high school or college, or starting to narrow in my circle. Usually the reason you're getting away from your authentic place is the human relationships around you. And they don't even have to be bad. I'll give you a great example that might be similar to yours. I realized 3.5 years ago that I was getting worse at marketing because I hired too many people from agencies. And even though I was the alpha and the CEO and dictating, their energy was starting to bleed into me. And so what did I do? I made a big to-do about it and said, I'm not as good as I used to be, started spending more time on my content, I had the power to do this, started to trim out some of the people that I thought were bringing too much of the tradition in a respectful, nice way. I think you have to protect your energy. You have to really, no different than a lot of us going through work, you need to figure out what in the job, what in your personal relationships, what in the content that you're consuming, what in the people that you're talking to, who can you rejigger, and how do you get into that place? You know, like it's getting back to those roots. I think it's funny how you asked the question. I would spend as much time as possible on who were you with and what were you consuming at the time that you were like the way you wish you were. One of the more interesting emails I get from people that consume my content is titled like, I'm back with you. Now that I've been doing it for a long time, I get a lot of people who say, you know, I stopped watching your content 5 years ago and I've started consuming it again 6 months ago and it's really helping me. And it's a version of what I'm talking to you about right now, which was they reset and tried to think about when they were happier or when they were more what they want to be, what were they doing, what were they consuming, and who were they with? And I think that's an audit you need to consider. Does that make sense in any way? It's hard. You know, the thing that's hard for all of us is it's in the subconscious. But I think that's what I would do if I was, when I'm in a rut, I try to go back and like, I do funny things, like I go garage sailing. I remember one time specifically, I even worked in my dad's store for a day just to, like, I'm telling you, I know I notice how I asked you, does that make sense? I knew you were gonna, like, it's not easy what I'm saying, but I do think if you can go very literal and say, okay, I was most authentic self when I was watching these kind of videos, because you can, even though you're a different man than you were 5 years ago, 3 years ago, you can start to do that. It's something worth thinking about. The only thing that ever works is understanding, to your point, the move out, that's a Band-Aid. Get into a fight with them, that's a Band-Aid. Set them straight, that's a Band-Aid. The only thing I've ever seen really work in this game is understanding the alternative will create a worse relationship with you and your parents. Meaning, the biggest challenge kids have that love their parents or are frustrated with their parents of not accepting their journey is understanding that if they, the child, compromises and appeases the parent, that within a decade, you will have such high levels of resentment towards your parents that your relationship for the rest of your lives will be negative. And so what you're deciding, because you love your parents, is that you're willing to bare your teeth and grind it out and be inconvenienced and struggle with it in the short term for the greater good. Because in this scenario, 50% of the time it works out, and parents always then rewrite history and are very proud, and you know how it is. And even if it doesn't work out, even if the child that's on a journey does not succeed, they have put themselves in a position to not blame their parents because they gave it their full effort, and they'll never have that resentment or regret. So I think the answer to your question is, in your scenario where you feel like you don't have a lot of options and you're not gonna change their mind with words, the only way you're gonna do it is by changing their mind with actions. It's just gonna take you 10 years, this goes into patience, it's just gonna take you 10 years, and you have to, in your mind, go very high level and say, I'm willing for it to not be ideal for the next 3, 5, 10 years, because if I quit this and do what I want them to do, well, there's no outcome that's gonna be healthy.
Gary, that was telling me the story today about him and Ali started creating content, and they were like sitting in the rooms and filming and editing and doing these comedy shows, and their parents were like, what are you guys doing? They didn't really respect it until the content went viral on WhatsApp, and then the parents, somebody shared it with the parents, and then he's like, oh, that's my son who made that.
Of course. Like I said, and I saw Zach laughed, parents are incredible in rewriting history. Oh, I've always believed you can do it. You know, look, parents love their as a parent, you love your children so much that it makes you delusional. You love them so much. You love them so much that you're not rational. And parents do overvalue other parents' opinions too much. That's why I hope this generation, all of you, the biggest thing that frustrates me is kids live it. Like almost all your parents have the same frustrations with their parents, but then they're doing it to you.
So don't do it to your kids.
That's right. My hope is that this generation becomes the generation that isn't a hypocrite.
Breaks the cycle.
Breaks the cycle.